We are here at the European Economic Congress with Grant from Copernic Space. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's been 50 years since the last man had tapped the foot on the moon, and a lot has changed in the space industry throughout these years. And we've got this new, very interesting and engaging project that you've created. Lately, I would say, at the start of exploration, of space exploration, it was all about discovery, reaching new frontiers. So, what's the idea behind your project?
Well, it's nice that you mentioned the 50 years until the whole moon aspect, because obviously we'll get into the first commercial lunar project that we're involved in. But a lot actually didn't change that much since then until recently, which represents this new coming of the new space economy. So it's privatizing, it's attracting a wider portion of the commercial market. And, a few years ago, we realized that, the space economy is going to be the largest and most important market in the future of mankind, not just from a capital economic aspect, but also when it comes to the solutions that it provides to life on Earth, people, animals, the environment, etc. But we also understood that it needs an entirely new what we call economic operating system. So, for example, the space economy is already a $500 billion economy, but it really has no market. So there's no place for you to even really discover all of these space companies and what we call the space assets that they offer, let alone the capability to be transactional with them in any sense. And this comes in two forms. One is commercialization. Right, so I'm a space company, I'm offering this. Here's a fast, efficient way in the digital economy to acquire rights, ownership to whatever that asset may be. And the other one is that equally archaic are the financing avenues. And the global world wants to be involved in space, but there's a lack of access to it, both from what we call space assets, as well as when it comes to investments. Right, and by applying blockchain in various ways, we're able to not just provide the first marketplace for space assets, which is what we're going to get into with the moon case, but also applying, sort of regulated DeFi applications to enable the retail market, the average person, to also have investment access into the space economy and receive a liquid asset back for it. So it fuels all these great space entrepreneurs, these solutions that are going to save lots of lives and advance humanity, but is also going to generate the newest and largest wealth class that will probably ever exist.
So how is the current lunar rover mission fitting in this idea of new space economy?
Yeah, so, in comparison to other marketplaces, especially Web3 marketplaces, right? So we count ourselves as this long-lasting era of the Web3 platform. So because it is space, it's very specific. So you can't just go open your marketplace and go, hey, you register space assets, you buy space assets. Each one of these verticals have certain nuances that you must, cater to, both from a user end as well as from the asset end. So we actually team up, and remember, we're a Web3 platform, so we don't control and we're non-intermediary when it comes to assets and the transactions, right? We host all the economic activity and the assets of the space economy. So we team up with great space companies. We define a valid commercial case with them that represents a vertical within the market. We execute that like, a great Hollywood premiere, a great NFT drop, whatever your thing is, and prove that standard and that case for that vertical in the market. So we're starting with physical payload and cargo, in this case with Lunar Outpost and the first commercial moon mission ever, which is their rover landing on the lunar South Pole within the next year or so.
Yeah, so let's talk about the rover for a bit. How is it built? How much cargo does it carry?
How it's built, I'll leave it to my friends at Lunar Outpost and Julian to explain those specifics. But what we did is we took 3.475 kilos of what is commercial payload space that they're offering to the wider commercial market, and we've done two things with it, right? We've created a digital commercialization standard and process to where companies can literally, or it can be individuals if they want to pay this price tag, can come on the marketplace. They can acquire the rights and ownership to 100 grams or more of physical cargo, because that's the minimum to actually physically send something is 100 grams. So 100 grams of more of physical cargo. They go through a digital process within our platform with Lunar Outpost. And when they complete the transaction, they get an NFT that represents the rights and the ownership to that physical space. What happens then is that when they put their cargo in it, they can transform that to represent an NFT that represents fractional ownership of their cargo, data access points to their cargo, and fractionalize that and resell it on the retail market, right? So not only are we creating a digital standard to faster, better, more efficiently, more scalably sell what they're already doing, but we actually turned it into a space asset that then can be further commercialized and revenue generated in the retail market. So it's the first time ever that the retail market, the average person, etc., has economic access or ownership in the space economy.
Yeah, so when it comes to the cargo, I suppose it has to follow some restrictions and rules, because it has to be pretty dense, right? So it fits.
That's not what most people bring up, but that is something that size does matter. It's based off volume, but continue, because there's other things that are standards that you can't do.
Yeah, right. But it has to follow some restrictions. You cannot send anything, right?
Right. We've even had some clients, interested clients, who wanted to physically send something that we, for example, couldn't clear. Right, but just so people know, like, as people think of space as this inaccessible thing, it's just for billionaires and NASA, and that's it. And there's a huge commercial market that wants to get into space. So we've had liquor companies, hemp companies, IoT companies, other crypto companies all come and be interested in how they can not only send something to the moon, but create unique space assets, what we call virtual space assets, out of it that's tied to ownership of an actual, true space asset.
Yeah, so why exactly NFTs? Why not crowdfunding or some kind of tenders? Just NFTs.
Well, technically in this case, it's not a financing or a fundraising thing. Mm-hmm. Right? So in this case, we're providing economic access and ownership, and we're fractionalizing it. Right, and also you have to look at ownership in secondary markets. So we also host the secondary market on our marketplace. So, and we've built it in consideration for space. So, for example, a Chinese national can buy fractional ownership in Lunar Outpost rover because they're a U.S. space company, and U.S. space companies can sell to Chinese nationals. So, for example, we even embed in the smart contracts and the NFTs themselves that they can only be traded with these type of entities that are cleared on our platform. So one of the revolutions around, applying NFTs is, one is you can streamline and automate loads of things, but we can include data licenses and access. For example, maybe one of these buyers is going to be generating data, and they want to fractionalize and sell on the retail market access to that data securely. Right? When you're buying an NFT, in that case, you're buying fractional ownership of what they have with access and that unique utility. Right? So there's various different ways to answer why NFTs and not this. I mean, for a lot of people is like, I own shares in companies worth millions, but what's my liquid market for liquidating those shares? Almost nothing. One of the biggest challenges in space is, if you're lucky, you have like a 10-year liquidity event timeline for your investments, your assets, etc. Obviously, one thing, tokenization, and in this kind of smarter sense that you can apply with NFTs, you can create a liquid market very fast for these new types of asset classes.
So you had a private sale, right, which has ended?
Yeah, so just to clear that up, and we're actually going to be changing the terminology because we're reopening this private sale portion. So the private sale, what you call private sale, we call physical cargo sale. So that's, you're buying the rights and ownership to actually physically send something to the moon, right? And the second, which you would refer to as the public sale, is like the virtual cargo sale. So that's the retail market buying fractional ownership and access of either cargo that's being sent up. So like, let's say Gucci wants to send up a scarf. I could buy fractional ownership of a Gucci scarf, on the moon, or empty space. And we provide certain utility through the empty space. You buy you buy the minimum empty space, you get to send, some data, a message physically on the rover's computer to the moon. You buy X more, you can brand your space, right? Because really it's about ownership. That's one of the revolutionary things NFTs bring is that ownership aspect. So owning your space on the moon is really something we want to provide the capability for everyone, so that the most important economy ever is built on that foundation and not the previous foundations.
Yeah, so this public sale is open for everybody.
Correct.
Yes. So it kind of is a concept of democratization of outer space, right?
Yeah.
How do you understand that?
Yeah. I mean, I try not to use this democratization of outer space thing, mainly because it's kind of a marketing term used by a lot of companies wrongfully. I don't think their version of democratization is, now multimillionaires can go to space. Like, that's not democratizing to me. For the Polish viewers, my grandfather helped create the astronaut program in Poland, a very progressive-minded guy, and he has early journal writings around this idea of democratizing space. So for me, this is my family legacy. This is something that my family's thought about for decades, and even when it comes to Copernic Space and how the platform and models work, I've spent at least 5 years investing myself into discovery and understanding how to bring a real solution for the space economy and not just abstractly throw crypto at space, right? Which is, you're going to see a lot of that coming up, trust me.
Yeah, so you're obviously a private company, right?
Correct.
And private companies have been around space industry since pretty much the beginning. However, they were mostly the contractors. So do you think that they will take place of more of cutting edge entities in the market, or they will remain kind of on the side of things?
Yeah, one thing people ask, like, well, how do you want to address Boeing? It's like, in all these big major incumbents who represent this older guard of the space economy, we have solutions for them. Like, our platform can be used for, their own private marketplaces, asset management. Because if you break down the platform, in its most bare bones, it's digital rights management and attached sort of things. But we're focused on the thousands of these newer space companies that are creating great work. Once again, most people think the space economy is just NASA and a few billionaires. It's not. It's thousands and thousands of companies creating countless amounts of cutting-edge solutions. You look at Lunar Outpost and what they're doing. It's the first commercial mission to the moon. They're the first rover to land, on lunar South Pole. They're going to be collecting, it's got Nokia's 4G internet on it, so they're going to be testing internet infrastructure from the moon. There's this whole end of the market that people aren't seeing that are aggressive. They're younger guys. They're more of our age sort of people, and women as well. There's lots of great women in the space economy. So we're more focused around providing a scalable solution for them that also enables and empowers the average person to have access to space for the first time.
So you mentioned Boeing, which is kind of a behemoth when it comes to space industry, and you are obviously a smaller company. So do you think more smaller companies would be able to compete in this market, which is
yes,
which has
and that's
very high barriers?
And that's the whole thing. Is like, I'm sure you've paid attention over the past 5 years, whether it was ICOs, what we're seeing in NFTs now, or even what we saw last year with AMC and a few of those stocks, where when the public rallies and collectivizes their capital into something they have passion for and emotional connection to, and there's nothing more innately passionate or liked than space, right? Like, it's the first drawings of mankind are looking into the stars. Like, we have a natural connection to it. If you collectivize that capital and give them an avenue, they'll eat the biggest hedge fund in a day. It's not going to be VCs who fuel the majority of the future of the space economy. It's going to be you and me and the camera guy here, and that's who's going to be doing it. But there needs to be a new model and system built to be able to do that, and that's what we represent.
Yeah, so
back to your question, I'm not the biggest Amazon fan in certain things, but you look at a guy like Bezos, when he said he's going to sell books through the internet originally, like, everybody laughed at him, right? They thought, well, why not? I'm going to go to Barnes and Nobles, I just buy my books. And it's it's kind of the same with us, is we're going to be that layer underneath that eventually companies like Amazon became, where now they're really operating how the economy moves in general.
what are some of the future plans that you are working on, and can you share some ideas that you are working in Copernic Space?
Yeah, I mean, the lunar case by itself is quite literally out of this world, so we're very focused on that. But just so people understand, satellite data is going to be revolutionized commercially by what we're doing, but generally by this applications of this technology. We have a case, for example, where there's already a proof of concept around it, etc., where you'll be able to go on our marketplace, buy access to X amount of photos. You get that as a license in NFT format. The NFT is not important. It's more about the function and the asset that it represents. And through that NFT, you can access directly an interface to request satellites to take certain images for you under that license that you purchased and download them, whatever it may be. Long term, people will be able to go on and get satellite imagery analysis, as easy as they're buying Jordans. That's going to take a little bit to build that sort of effectiveness, but these are some of the cases we're working on. Growing food on the International Space Station, right? These are certain companies we're partnered with. You guys have lots of crypto users. One of our partners already has nodes in space, and we want to democratize and allow the market to mint, have computing capacity, transaction confirmation in space, right? Another one is investing into mining in space. So, carbon neutral, solar powered, cryptocurrency mining in space. Like, the space economy is the creation of the new space economy is the creation of a whole new economy. And wait till we get into asteroid mining and these sort of things, and the type of asset, just scalability and wealth that's going to create. I mean, the biggest natural resource battles for things that are in your phone right now, these are very rare metals that aren't so rare in space, right? So it's really going to represent a huge new dawn and age. And just remember, if I told you 2 years ago that there's going to be almost $100 billion market of just selling, digital art thingies, you would have told me I'm crazy, right? So I've spent 8 years around crypto. I've spent a long time around space, and those two things are about to hit, and they have to hit.
Yeah, to end our discussion, I would like to ask you about one thing. NASA is planning a mission to the moon in 2025, Artemis mission. I'm kind of a space enthusiast myself, and I would like to know your opinion about, will it succeed? Is it feasible or not?
I'm not. One thing about me, which is part of my advantage, is I'm not a rocket scientist. So I'm not there to, I have a macroeconomic perspective of space. So I'm not there to debate whether it's possible technically or not. The U.S. space program has, a pretty good track record. I mean, if you guys know, like, the computing power in the first moon landing was like what's in a calculator nowadays, pretty much. But a lot of people don't know this. A bunch of moon missions recently have crashed. I believe the Israelis did one recently that crashed. So there's loads of challenges. I believe, of course, that they're probably going to pull that off. So the cool thing around the Lunar Outpost mission is that that's the beginning, really, of that infrastructure you're talking about being built on the moon. So they're landing on the lunar South Pole. That's also where Artemis is going to be landing. So, and that rover's going to stay there. So there's also the possibility that they're then going to go and retrieve stuff that's within the rover. And there's the 4G thing that they're going to be testing. We have on our team, on our advisory board, Kevin O'Connell, who's the former director of Department of Space Commerce for the U.S. Department of Commerce. And he said out of the $3 trillion space economy that's going to grow over the next decade, almost $1 trillion of it is going to be focused around lunar assets. So this is just the beginning of actually building infrastructure on the moon, and all this stuff is happening way faster than people realize.
I'm so hyped that so much stuff is happening in the space industry right now, and it is coming to the foreground. And if you combine it with digital marketplace and blockchain technology, I'm even more hyped. And thank you for this nice conversation, Grant.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here.
And I hope that become an owner in space very soon through what they're doing, since you have such a passion for it.
Sure.